Hello everybody, and welcome to another Ravnica Allegiance Guild draft guide. Today we are going to be looking at Orzhov, the Black-White Guild. But before we dive in, I do want to remind you that if you enjoy this video, be sure to hit that thumbs up. If this video gets to 50 thumbs up, I guarantee I will be making future installments into the draft guide series. Also, if you want to support the channel and get updates for whenever I post new content, including future draft guides and draft videos, be sure to hit that subscribe button. I really do appreciate it. And finally, if you do have any questions or comments about the things that I say in this guide, or just things about Ravnica Allegiance and Orzhov in general, be sure to leave those in the comments section down below, and I will happily respond with my thoughts and answers. But without further ado, let's get into the guide. So in this guide, we are going to be talking first of all about what Orzhov wants to be doing, then we're going to talk about why you should draft Orzhov, how to draft Orzhov, and throughout the guide we are going to be talking about key cards and synergies in Orzhov. So Orzhov's mission statement, this is their goal in draft, and sometimes in sealed, though there's a little bit less synergy involved in sealed. I have their mission statement as play creatures that can trade for value and end the game with 1/1 flying tokens, leverage strong removal to kill problematic threats. Orzhov has some of the best removal in the entire format. Plentiful removal, strong removal, so they can really kill almost any type of creature that they want because their removal is mostly unconditional, or conditional but can still kill most things. And then a lot of their creatures have the mechanic Afterlife, which means that when the creature dies, it becomes Afterlife, however many the number for Afterlife is, that many 1/1 flying tokens. And that's going to be really important for winning late games, because you're going to be able to play your early creatures, and then say you play your 2/1 that has Afterlife, you trade it with their 2/2, and then you have an extra 1/1, and you can start hitting them with that and win the late game. So I think that's going to be Orzhov's goal. When you are drafting Orzhov, you do want to prioritize the removal. It is what Orzhov does best. Orzhov has probably the best removal of any guild in this set. Then you want to take Afterlife creatures, because that's how you're going to get to the middle to late stage of the game at an advantage. You're going to be able to trade off your creatures and then kill any creatures with your removal that you aren't going to be able to trade with. So you want to be taking those Afterlife creatures so you can maintain an advantage without a ton of card draw and things like that. Also, I think you do want to be taking some good sacrifice outlets in Orzhov. I'll explain why a little bit later, but basically there's certain sacrifice outlets that are going to be quite good in Orzhov, but be careful which ones you take. And then another thing is, don't go overboard with expensive cards. Orzhov has a lot of like 5 drops, 6 drops, even 7 drops that might be tempting, but you really need to remember that you can't just go overboard on expensive cards. You have to make sure your curve stays low. So there's like 6 and 7 drops that are just not worth playing in Orzhov, and some of the there's multiple 5 drops that are like pretty medium as well. Okie doke, so now we're going to be talking about the top commons. At number 1, I have Summary Judgment. I think this card is going to be very good in the set. Essentially, it can be unconditional removal at sorcery speed a lot of the time, because 5 damage kills almost any threat. And then at instant speed, you can also kill some things if you really want to save that damage, or if you've been holding up your mana for this turn and they play something with haste or something of that nature. So Summary Judgment is going to be a very strong common. And I have it at number 1, partially because it's a monocolored card. So if you take Summary Judgment, you can also play it in your Azorius deck. So if you take it early, it has some flexibility. At number 2, I have Grotesque Demise, another really strong removal spell. Exiling creature with power 3 or less at instant speed is really nice, and it is at instant speed as well. So there are some cool things you can do, like respond to combat tricks with it. And also, it is a monocolored card, so it can also fit into a Rakdos deck quite nicely, and that is why I have it at number 2. Final Payment is a card that you do not want to have too many copies of, I think, but 2 mana to kill any creature is really nice. A lot of the time, you're going to be able to pay 5 life the first time, especially in like certain mid-rangey matchups or controlling matchups. Against aggro decks, a cool trick you can do is you can block one creature, and then their other creature might be getting through the one that you really want to kill, and then you sacrifice the creature that was chump blocking and kill that creature, so you essentially absorb some extra damage that way and don't have to pay the 5 life. I think Final Payment is going to be quite good, but you probably don't want too many copies of it, because in multiples you can like kill your own life total faster than your opponent's creature would anyway. So Final Payment is something you need to be careful with, and definitely use it well if you do have access to that unconditional removal. At number 4, I have Grasping Thrall. This card is quite strong. The fact that when it comes into into play, you immediately deal 2 damage to them and gain 2 life is really nice, as it helps you stabilize a bit. The life gain can be quite nice, and also the fact that it does damage immediately means that it can really help swing a race in your favor. So I think Grasping Thrill is going to be quite nice as a finisher for Orzhov. And then finally, I have Imperious Oligarch. It is a 2-mana 2/1 Vigilance, which means that it's just going to be able to chip in, and then it has Afterlife 1. So because of the Vigilance, it means that the opponent is going to have to trade with it eventually or deal with it in some way, because you're not just attacking with your 2/1 and then they're attacking you back with their 2/1 or 2/2. You're going to attack them, and then if they don't trade, then if they attack, you can just trade on your turn. So it really puts them in a nice position for you. And so I think that Imperious Oligarch is going to be quite nice. What are the Orzhov All-Stars, the cards that are going to be incredible in Orzhov? And I think at number 1, undoubtedly Mortify is going to be unbelievable. 3 mana, destroy target creature or enchantment. Doesn't get much simpler than that, but it is also an incredibly powerful effect at instant speed. You don't have to do anything with like paying 5 life or sacrificing creatures. You just 3 mana, kill whatever you want. Very strong card, definitely a high priority, and a card that is going to make Orzhov very scary if you're trying to play big creatures. I think that the black, white card for Orzhov, Basilica Bellhaunt, is not as good as some of the other 2-color gold cards, like color cards, but I think it is still quite nice. A 3/4 is definitely a relevant body. Gaining 3 life is not an insignificant amount if you're trying to stabilize, and making them discard a card makes this an inherent 2-for-1. So it is still a nice card, though not as devastating as some of the other guilds' gold card, like color cards. Pitiless Pontiff, I think, is going to be really nice, especially if on defense, because it essentially is able to trade with any creature. It lets you trade any of your other creatures for the creature that you're blocking with it, which is really nice. And it can also help protect your Afterlife creatures from removal spells. One thing that I will note is that a lot of the removal spells in this set exile the creature, which seems like a little bit of a kick Orzhov type of mechanic. I don't know why they have so many exile removal spells. Maybe Orzhov was a very good guild in their testing, but there's a lot of removal that exiles, and being able to sacrifice another creature at instant speed means that even if they are going to kill your creature, you can at least sacrifice it so that you can get those 1/1 tokens, which is going to be quite nice. Spirit of the Spires is one that you might not think of, but when you think about the fact that the Afterlife tokens are flyers, and you may be on defense, having a bunch of 1/2 blockers makes it a lot easier to multi-block something than having a bunch of 1/1s. So for example, if they attack you with a 3/3, and you can block that with 2 1/2 tokens and a 2/2, they're only going to be able to kill one of those creatures, so that attack becomes a lot worse than if all of your 1/1 tokens are just 1/1s. So I think Spirit of the Spires is actually going to be pretty good in Orzhov. And then finally, Consecrate Consume is going to be really nice. Consume is the main mode you're going to be using it for, and I think that it gets around a lot of the downsides that sacrifice effects traditionally have, because they do have to sacrifice a creature with the greatest power. So you're going to be able to kill something relatively big and gain life based on that creature's power. So if they play a 5/5, you make them sacrifice it and you gain 5, that's going to be a huge swing in your favor. So I think those are going to be some of the best cards in Orzhov. And of course, Consecrate may have some utility in certain games, and also like if you just need to cycle it and draw a card, that can be useful as well. Here are the types of sacrifice outlets that I think you are going to want to play or not want to play. Starting off with the good ones, I think Undercity Scavenger is going to be quite nice. If you can play a creature that has Afterlife and then play Undercity Scavenger, you're going to end up with a 5/5, a couple of 1/1 flyers, or 1/1 flyer. Either way, you're kind of getting a free sacrifice because you're going to still end up with a creature out of the deal. And a 4-mana 5/5 is quite nice. The Scry 2 is very nice as well, especially at the 4-drop point on the curve, because you can set up for good 5-drops to draw, or you can alternately draw some lands if you have a 5-drop that you want to play. I think Final Payment is going to be a really good sacrifice outlet. As I said before, you can do the trick where you block and then sacrifice a creature in response. Another thing you can do is if your opponent targets your creature with removal, you can use Final Payment to sacrifice it in response and kill their other creature, which is a really nice way to kind of get the opponent as well. And then another cool thing you can do is if they put a enchantment that essentially stops your Afterlife creature from dying, like a pacifism type effect, you can use your Final Payment and sacrifice that creature, get the tokens, and kill their guy. So I think Final Payment is going to be a nice sacrifice outlet. And Pitiless Pontiff, I already talked about a little bit. Basically, you just want to be able to sacrifice your creatures to dodge some of the exile effects. And then some bad sacrifice outlets. Knight of the Last Breath. I think that this card is kind of a tricky one for a lot of people because there is this natural association in your brain of gold card equals good card, and that's something that I think Knight of the Last Breath kind of goes against because it is 7 mana, and 7 mana is just so much in limited that it needs to be a very, very strong effect, and Knight of the Last Breath just isn't strong enough to justify 7 mana, I do not think. Afterlife 3 is quite nice, but the fact that the tokens only come out after it dies means that you're not necessarily gaining a huge advantage when you play it, and they can just attack around it. So if you really need a creature to help you stabilize and you play Knight of the Last Breath, they can kind of get around it relatively easily. And I think that it's just, the sacrifice ability is just too expensive. I kind of wish that that sacrifice ability was free or cost 1 mana or something like that. It is really expensive to sacrifice your creatures. You can't really afford to hold up 3 mana a lot of the time, though maybe later in the game you can. I think it's kind of just a very, like, medium to bad card. I don't think it's, like, unplayable, but definitely not something you really want to be taking highly. And then Bloodmist Infiltrator I do think is quite poor. It's the fact that you don't really have a ton of control over when you sacrifice the creature is a huge downside, and it's also a 3-mana 3/1 that's not super great. Its ability is pretty medium, so I don't think Bloodmist Infiltrator is good as well. Good either, I mean. But now we will move on to some of the traps, as I already talked about. Knight of the Last Breath is a bit of a trap just because it's a gold card, and people associate gold cards with being good cards, which is not necessarily something you want to be doing. So I think Knight of the Last Breath, I don't think it's unplayable, but I think it's not really the type of card you can just put into any deck, because 7 mana is a huge commitment. You don't get to 7 mana in a large number of your games, so I don't think you really just want to be playing Knight of the Last Breath, and it might be a little bit better in Sealed, but overall, just not a huge fan of that card. Ill-Gotten Inheritance is another trap. I don't know why, but people love this type of card, especially newer players. They're like, wow, I'm doing damage to them every turn. But the thing with Ill-Gotten Inheritance is if you play Ill-Gotten Inheritance and your opponent plays a creature on that turn, you're just so far behind, and you're basically just losing the game because of that. So even though you are draining them for 1 every turn, you're essentially draining from newer players is when you deal damage to them and you gain a life. And it does have that extra activated ability to maybe push through some more damage. I still just think Ill-Gotten Inheritance is a card you never want to play. A Vindictive Vampire is another one that is a bit of a trap, because the thing with Orzhov is you have better uses for your tokens than just have, like, you don't have enough ways to control your creatures dying for Vindictive Vampire to be good, and you don't really want to be sacrificing creatures just to ping them for 1 with Vindictive Vampire. A 4-mana 2/3 is just so below rate that I think Vindictive Vampire is just not going to be worth it in Limited. Or Standard either, or anything. It's just not a very good card. Bankrupt in Blood, another card that may get some people. It says draw 3 cards on it, which makes people really excited, but sacrificing 2 creatures is too great of a cost, so I don't think you should ever play Bankrupt in Blood. And then finally, Thirsting Shade. People love 1-drops, especially 1-mana 1, like 1/1s always get people. They're like, oh, this one has lifelink, this one has this extra ability. But the thing is Thirsting Shade, it just costs too much mana to pump it. It also is it's just not going to have a big enough impact on the game. So I think Thirsting Shade is unplayable. So do not play these cards if you can avoid it. Knight of the Last Breath maybe if you're a super grindy sealed deck, but probably not great in draft, and none of these other cards are even really playable. Things to remember when you are drafting Orzhov. A lot of the removal in this set exiles or is enchantment based, so make trades when you can. If you have an Afterlife creature and you can make a profitable trade or a medium trade or a trade that seems relatively even, you should probably make it, because if you end up trying to race the opponent and they're forced to kill the creature, they may just exile the creature instead. Which would be really bad for you, because then you don't get your value. A lot of Afterlife creatures are a little bit understated, or even significantly understated if they have Afterlife too. And so if those creatures get exiled, then you find yourself in a really bad situation. So make sure that doesn't happen. Put sacrifice outlets into your deck so that you can kill your own creatures for value if you need to. And make sure that you don't get all of your guys exiled. Another thing you need to remember is you need to have a plan for the late game. Orzhov is not the greatest aggressive deck. It stems from the same thing that I was talking about earlier, where a lot of the Afterlife creatures are not largely statted creatures because they do die and make a 1/1, which is a significant amount of value. So they're not like hugely statted to start with, and so they kind of just want to trade off, and then you slowly grind them down with tokens. So you do want to have a little bit of a plan for the late game, have enough removal that you can kill your opponent's late game cards and win with your smaller flyers, or have a bomb that you have in your deck that you know you can win the late game with. But if you don't have a plan for the late game, you're going to be in trouble with Orzhov because they don't really have the tools to win a super aggressive early game. And then finally, use your removal wisely. You do want to be trading off your creatures a lot of the time. So if you can save your removal for cards you can't trade off with well, then that would be best for you. How do you beat Orzhov? First of all, Cry of the Carnarium destroys them. It's really funny because this is a guild set, and I don't think Rakdos really wants to be playing Cry of the Carnarium either because it kills a lot of their creatures, and Orzhov probably doesn't want to be playing it because it kills all of your creatures as well a lot of the time, and the fact that it exiles them really makes their Afterlife a lot worse. So I can definitely imagine scenarios where your opponent casts this and just wipes your board because even your, like, there's certain 5-drops in Orzhov that are like 5-mana 3/2s with Afterlife 2, and then you just kill those, exile them, they get no effect. I don't know where Cry of the Carnarium is going to come into play, but it's going to be a brutal sideboard card at the least against Orzhov and just completely destroy them in certain games. So beware of this card. If your opponent is like not playing any creatures but they have like a full hand, maybe try to play around this card if you've seen it or you suspect they have it, but definitely a scary card for Orzhov. But yeah, and then also another way to beat Orzhov is by exiling their Afterlife creatures and pressuring them. If their Afterlife creatures aren't able to trade and get that 1/1, then it's really going to be harder for them to stall the game and start getting that incremental value that Orzhov likes to get. And then another way to beat Orzhov is just to have a better late game. Orzhov doesn't actually have unbelievable late game creatures in this at uncommon and uncommon. So you can oftentimes just have a better plan for the late game. You can be a Simic deck and just have a bunch of adapt creatures, and that Orzhov will just have to kill every single one of them, and then they'll run out of removal and you'll win. Or you could be playing an Azorius deck and have some really nice flyers that they'll have to deal with by like triple blocking with their tokens and stuff like that. So if you have a better late game than Orzhov, they are going to struggle as well. Anyway, that is going to do it for this guide. I would like to thank you for watching and making it all the way to the end. If you want to check out more of my guides, you can find them elsewhere on my channel. I have now finished the guide for every single guild, but if you do want to see more draft guides in the future, be sure to hit that thumbs up. Hopefully we can get to 50 thumbs up as well. And I will be posting draft videos of the set, so stay tuned for those as well by subscribing. And yeah, remember that if you have any questions or comments, just be sure to leave those in the comment section down below. I really do enjoy interacting with you guys, and I am happy to answer any of your questions. Good luck at your pre-release, good luck in your first drafts, and I will talk to you guys next time.